going to give everybody a second to join. And just want to welcome you to the Youth Hunter Ed series. Tonight we are covering firearm safety and handling. It's brought to you by the Nevada Department of Wildlife. And tonight you're hosted by me. My name is Dawn Anderson. I'm the Hunter Education and Archery Education Coordinator for the Nevada Department of Wildlife. We have Bernie Crooks, who's an instructor with us, and I'll let him introduce himself. Bernie, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Bernie Crooks, and I've been with Hunter Ed now for over 10 years.
Over 10 years.
Enjoy it tremendously. It's something that you find that after 60 years of hunting and fishing, you can start giving back a little bit.
I love it. And then we're going to have some assistance tonight provided by a junior instructor, Orion. He's going to be helping me out with some of the firearm safety here in a little bit. So welcome and thank you for spending your Wednesday evening with us. And a couple things I got to go over. So thank you for joining the Nevada Department of Wildlife for a conservation education program. This is a family-friendly program and is rated PG. Profanity or inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated in the chat or the Q&A boxes. All questions in the Q&A and the chat box should be on topic. Failing to follow these guidelines will result in being muted in the live stream or even in the Q&A and chat. So welcome. Introductions, I already gave you some introductions there. Thank you guys for joining us. Let me see if we know a couple of these people on here tonight. We'll give them some shout outs, see if they attended last week. We've got Marcy, woohoo! And we've got Taylor. And I know we have several others, but Marcy has been joining us frequently and I absolutely love that she's been joining us. All right, let me go back. I skipped that page. All right, so tonight we're going to be covering firearm safety and handling. We're anticipating about 30 to 45 minutes. That's including questions. If you have any questions, place them in the Q&A section and I'll get to you, or Bernie will get to you, but we'll get them answered. After the webinar, you'll receive a link to a survey. We encourage you to fill them out. Give us your feedback and let us know what you'd like to see more of, or if there's specific topics that you'd like us to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop share screening here. And I'm going to give you another share screen. Let me find my HE tools here, which is right here. Give me a second while I get us going. There we go. Didn't want to share it. All right. Bernie, can you see the HE tools?
Yeah, I can see it fine.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna start with what is a firearm. So the very first step to becoming a responsible hunter is knowing your equipment and knowing how to use it safely. So with that, a firearm is a mechanical device that uses pressure from a burning powder to project a projectile through and out a metal tube, which is your muzzle. We'll get into all of those parts too. So there's some basic parts to your firearm. And let me see, Orion, come here, dude. Maybe. Okay, he's vanished. I'm gonna go over the parts. So I have a shotgun right here. This is my 20 gauge shotgun. Hopefully you guys can see that. And there are three basic parts to a firearm. Every firearm has these basic parts. You have your action. This is your action right here. And that's what it opens, and that's where you load your ammo. And then you have your stock, which is your butt, or that big plate at the end of it. And then you have your barrel, which is the end. So three main parts. your action, your stock, and your barrel. I thought I had Orion coming, but he hasn't appeared yet. Orion. Yeah, maybe he'll wander past here in a few minutes. All right, so I'm gonna go over so what we do, let me start first. So when we do a hunter ed class, we use non-firing educational tools is what we like to call them. They're guns. They're non-firing, but every time that we pass them to somebody else in the class, and I was hoping he was going to be in here, so if he appears, then I will put him to use. So every time that we pass a gun, whether that's in a class, we like to get in the habit of it, or out in the field, you always want to, whether it's getting in or out of a boat, whether it is passing your gun over a fence to somebody else, you always want to make sure your action is open, and you want to make sure that you can see inside that action and know that there's nothing in there. Your chamber is completely clear. So what we say is action open, my chamber is clear, and then my safety is on. And we're going to look at safeties here in a little bit, but this one has, I'll get up there a little bit close. You can see the safety right there. There's a safety. But all safeties are different. They all look different. Know where your safety is, but you don't want to depend on it, because a safety is a mechanical device that can fail. So you don't want to completely depend on it. Bernie, is there anything you want to add to that before we move on?
No, I've got a little bit short story that I used to, when I first started, I used to be a fiddler of triggers and safeties. And I was very young. I was 7 years old. Okay. And I accidentally fired a shot. And we were on a 3-day pheasant trip up in Oregon. And I spent the rest of the trip sitting in the car when my dad asked me, and I had to figure out an excuse, and I didn't have one.
That was a tough lesson to learn, huh?
It was a tough lesson, and I've never since.
And you never did it again.
Tested the safety.
All right. So there are different actions for different guns. And I'm going to show you here. You've got a visual here. These are the different types of guns. So you have a bolt action, and you have a pump action, a semi-automatic action, a lever action, and a brake action. And all of these actions look differently. So I'm going to pop into here, and I'm hoping that it's not going to be too loud. Let me turn it down just a little bit, because it was a little loud last night. So, and then I'm going to show you. Oop, hold on. Okay, so this is how the bolt action loads. So it goes this piece up here on the top. Can you see my cursor? Can you see my mouse, Bernie? A little bit? No? Can you hear me, Bernie?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I don't want it to be too loud, so I turned it down a little bit. Okay, so this is what a bolt action looks like when you're loading it and then when it's firing. And then you have a pump action. And this is how a pump action is loaded and fired. I don't want it to be too loud. That's what I'm concerned about. All right. Then you have a semi-automatic. Then you have your lever action. And then you have your brake action. And I'm showing you these because a lot of people don't know that there's different action types. And when we hold in-person classes, We try to get all of the different action types in everybody's hands so that way they know how to use them and what they look like. All right, and you can see where that firing pin hits the back of the bullet or that shot shell and forces it out the chamber as well. So those are your different action types. And again, keep in mind that the safeties are all going to look different as well. And we're going to talk about safeties right now. So some safeties they all look different, but again, I can't push that they are mechanical devices and that they can fail. So you don't want to completely depend on them. You want to make sure that you go through what we did a little bit earlier whenever you're handling those guns, of making sure this is the true way to make sure that you're safe, that there's nothing in there, that action's open, you can see down your chamber is clear, keep your fingers, keep everything out of it, then your safety is on. Okay, so making sure that your gun is clear, that chamber is clear, is the best safety piece. So, and this piece, as you can see up here, that safety is right there. Each gun is different, so know your gun. These are what we see most commonly. There's a little button there that slides left to right. Our saying in Hunter Ed is red is dead. So if you see that red, that means it's ready to fire. You always keep the safety off until you're ready to shoot. Different type of safety here. That one just scrolls back and forth. Again, typically that red means dead. So keep that in mind. You have a slider safety here. Another click one. So there's tons of different, this is a slider. There's tons of different safeties out there. Just again, make sure that you know your gun. Here's a safety on a handgun. Again, it's that slider one. The best way to make sure that your gun is safe though is making sure that it's unloaded and not firing until you're ready to fire. All right, so now I'm gonna go into parts of a firearm and I'll describe them for you here. So right here we have a bolt action, and I'll show you on my gun too. I don't know if it's gonna be, what way is gonna be easier. So down here you have your stock, as we talked about before. Your stock is your handle of your firearm. Then you have your butt plate down there on the very end, and that's the part of the stock that you hold against your shoulder when you're shooting. It doesn't go down here, it doesn't go past here. It goes on your shoulder right there. That's where it seats. And then it goes against, right underneath your cheek right there. And that's how you know when your gun is planted properly. Then you have your safety. Again, it's a mechanical device that blocks the trigger to the hammer to help prevent accidental firing, but you should never depend on it. On here, we have a bolt action, as you can see. That's the handle that is used to open the gun to load it. Then you have, let's see what else is on here. I'm making sure they're the same. We have there's sights typically on it, and there's tons of different sights. A sight is a device used for aligning the front of your gun to a target. And there's several different sights. There's open sights. We're not going to get into those today, but you have your rear sight and your front sight, and those are exactly what they are. They're sights. Then you have, let's see, right here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but right in here, you have your chamber, and your chamber is the barrel used to hold the cartridge or shot shell when you're ready to shoot. Then right up here at the top, you have your muzzle. And your muzzle is the end of the barrel where the projectile or the bullet shoots out of. Then you have your barrel, and your barrel is that metal tube which the projectile travels. Then you have your forearm or your forestock. And that's the front portion of the stock that extends under the barrel in front of the receiver, usually held by the non-trigger hand to help support the firearm. So like I was showing you a few minutes ago, that gun comes up right here, your cheek goes to it, you've got a hand here, and then this hand is your balancing hand. That hand's gonna hold that gun there. And that's pretty much that job's responsibility, is just to support that front end of that gun. Then you have your magazine. Your magazine is a container on a repeating firearm that holds ammunition before it's loaded into the chamber. It's usually tubes or boxes attached to the receiver. Then you have your trigger guard, and that's a piece that surrounds the trigger that protects it from being squeezed or bumped accidentally. Then you have your trigger, and your trigger is that small lever that is squeezed to start the firing process. And that's pretty much all of your parts to a firearm. Bernie, you have anything else to add?
No. Yeah, on 2 of the demos. Oh, by the way, is this the new HE program?
Nope, I'm using 7.
It's excellent.
Thank you.
On a couple of the examples, we had a magazine, they push in the bottom. In most bolt actions, they load through the action.
Yes.
And there's a floor plate that you can activate, and you can see that you can actually see the little button right in front of the trigger guard, and it drops the floor plate and you remove the shells that way. And don't forget about the one that might be in the hole.
Absolutely. But pretty much all of your guns have the same, they're made up of the same parts. So they have the same parts on them. On the shotguns, pretty much your difference is up on the top up here, you have some ribbing. It's hard to see it, but this piece right here is called rib. It's a ribbing. And then you have your sights. Here's another piece of sights right there. You got sights here. So there's different type of sights. And I think that's pretty much the difference.
How come that rib is up in the air off the barrel?
That's a good question.
I mean, we get that quite a bit. Why is some barrels round and some have a rib on it?
A rib on them? The ribbing, I know, helps with the sights, has something to do with the sight specifically.
The heat.
Is it heat specifically? Yeah. Well, totally makes sense though. Completely makes sense. So, all right. You learn something new every day.
It helps you quite a bit.
Yeah. All right. So with that, let me see where we're at with time. We're doing good with time. All right. And I'm not going to get too much into sights because I think sights get a little bit too complicated. And then we'll get into that firearm safety and handling portion. So we have the big 4 that we abide by, right, Bernie? We talked about those last week. You remember our big 4, Bernie? It's been a hot minute since we taught.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking.
That tells me what you're teaching.
I was planning ahead and I wasn't listening to you.
Our big 4. So finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot, knowing what's behind you, all those general safety, those common sense safety rules, right?
That barrel is always pointed in a safe direction.
Yes, and we covered those last week. So for you guys joining us again, I'm sure you remember them. I hope you remember them. I hope you get in the habit of them. All right, so we'll briefly cover those. So we treat every gun as if it's loaded, always, until that action open, chamber clear, safety's on. All right, we control the gun muzzle at all times. So again, that's knowing where your gun is pointed, what you're shooting at, not shooting till you know you have your target on, keeping your finger off that trigger. Guns are to be stored unloaded and with their actions open, and ammo gets treated or separated in a different spot so you don't store your guns and ammo together. Be sure the barrel and the action are clear of obstructions, that only the proper ammunition is carried with every gun use. And we talked about this a little bit last week, is just make sure when you're out there, because it's easy to do with shot shells. When you're out duck hunting, let's say the weekend before you went chucker hunting, and this weekend you're going duck hunting and you used a 12 gauge last week, and this week you're using the 20 gauge. They're not color specific. So just because you're shooting a 20 gauge doesn't mean all of the ammo is going to have a red shot shell case. They can be yellow, they can be orange, they can be green. The best way is to match that ammo down there on the bottom. You can see in this picture on that shot shell that it says the gauge of it. And then what you're going to do, your next step, let me see if I can get a clear enough view on it. I don't think I can. Okay, I don't know if I can get it close enough, but on every gun on your, right here in this area, general area, it'll tell you your gauge of your gun, your size of your gun. So match your gun to the proper ammo. Always make sure you clean out if you've got a duck bag or a backpack or your waders or your jackets, always make sure before you rip that ammo out to, reload your gun, that it's the correct ammo.
That's so important, Dawn. A 20 gauge shell will fall right inside that barrel.
It will.
Especially on a breaking gun where you drop the shell into it, and it turns it into something that's really, really hazardous.
Preventable. So, and I wasn't planning on showing it, but I'll show what happens when you put the wrong ammo in the wrong gun here shortly. Okay. Make sure that you have your target identification before you pull that trigger. So never pull the trigger until you know what you're shooting at 100%, no questions. So in this case, we have multiple things that you wouldn't take the shot. In a hunter ed world, you wouldn't take the shot. In an ethical world, you would not take the shot. And remember, ethics is doing the right thing when no one is looking. And the reason why is because this speed goat, this antelope, pronghorn antelope, is up here on a ridge and we can't see what's behind him. There could be another hunter on the other side scoping him out. There could be another, antelope laying behind him. There's a handful of reasons that you don't ever want to take a shot like this. So make sure you know your target and know what's beyond it. Never point a gun at anything you do not want to shoot. So that could be your foot, that could be looking for an obstruction and sticking your finger down it or your eyeball down it. You don't want to do that. The best way, as we've talked about, to avoid those, they're not even accidents, they're preventable. To avoid those injuries, just don't point a gun at anything you don't intend to shoot. And again, action open, chamber clear, safety on, making sure that your gun is completely safe at all times if you're not using it. Rule number 7, never climb a fence or a tree or cross a ditch or other obstacle with a loaded gun, and never pull a gun toward you by the muzzle. Okay, so, and we're going to get into this in a few minutes too. So again, like when we get into crossing fences and stuff, what I always do is, again, make sure you know where that muzzle's pointed at all times. Because if you're hunting with somebody's walking behind you, and we'll get into carries, you're not going to want to carry your gun like this. You're going to want to know where that muzzle's pointed at all times. And remember, our action's open, chamber's clear, and our safety's on. So right now my gun is completely safe. Okay, so if I'm going across a fence, what I typically do is I take off my hat, I cover the end of my gun with it to make sure, because we're Nevada, we're desert, we're dirt, we're sagebrush, we're mud. Cover the top of your gun there, and then just go ahead with your hat or whatever else you have, wrap it around the end of it, lay it down on the ground, and we'll get into it in a few minutes. And that will keep your barrel and your muzzle clear of any type of obstructions. Never shoot at water or a hard, flat surface, and always be sure your backstop is adequate. In the Hunter Ed test, whether you're taking it online or in class, when we get back to that, there are multiple questions on the test that refer to this. Always make sure you're shooting into a suitable backstop. The reason why we don't want to shoot into water, there's typically nothing that you need to be shooting at anyway in the water or at rocks or flat surfaces, period. So, and not only that, if you're shooting at rocks and stuff, we risk starting fires. So we don't want that attached to us as well. So just be safe. What happens is if you're shooting those shot shells or something into the water's shallow and stuff, and it can ricochet, it can hit it and come right back at you. And again, as we keep talking about, those are preventable injuries. So store guns and ammo separately, out of reach of people who are unfamiliar with safe gun handling. And we hear this often in the news. There are children that get a hold of guns out of purses, out of bedrooms. There's curiosity with them. You can prevent those by making sure that your guns are always locked up. And again, you'll hear me say it over and over, storing them safely. That action's open, your chamber's clear, your safety's on, and there's no ammo in sight. Never handle a firearm or operate a vehicle when you are affected by drugs or alcohol. This is just a common sense one. They don't go hand in hand together. And since we're teaching a kids class, we don't have to worry about that. But as you get older, there at the end of the day is one thing, but guns and drugs and beer don't go together at the same time. All right, and those are our main rules. I just wanted to cover those one more time. All right, so now we're going to get into different carrying positions as I talked about before. And I'm going to show you the names of these. They're in our Hunter Ed book, and this is called a shoulder carry. These are typically, and we'll get into zones of fire as well. Maybe, Bernie, do you want to talk about zones of fire real quick before we do that?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
The zone of fire is something that's kind of confusing when you try to teach it. This graphic here that we're looking at is a one-dimensional graphic. Mm-hmm. The zone of fire is really governed by the end of your gun. And if you can picture a funnel with the sides of the funnel being 45 degrees off center, stuck in the end of that barrel, and you swing it around, the zone of fire is moving. And it moves up, down, and whichever way you happen to be pointing that shotgun. You notice that as the bird goes by, they come up. And if you find out that you have intruded into another person's zone of fire, in other words, let's say the guy in the center is a real fast walker and he walks forward 10 or 15 feet. All of a sudden he's in the two guys on each end, he's in their zone of fire. Mm-hmm. So you have to really, really think of it as that gun barrel dictates the zone of fire, no matter where you move it.
So
it has 45 degrees off of 90, which is straight ahead of the barrel. And if you swing it to the left, that whole V that you're looking at in the middle would swing all the way towards that the one on the left. So this is why we have practical in hunter education.
Yes.
You just don't see the practicality of the safe zone of fire until you get out there and actually see what happens when you do something wrong or do something right.
So zones of fire are important when you're out bird hunting with multiple people.
Especially bird hunting.
Yes, because typically it's you're doing some sort of fleshing. You want to make sure that with those people that you're shooting with, you guys are all walking at the same pace. And again, that 45-degree zone of fire is pretty much just straight in front of you. As you can see in that cone, it's straight in front of you, 45 degrees. And the reason why is because when you're shooting from a shotgun, those BBs or those pellets come out at that funneled angle. So what can happen is it can spray, if you guys aren't all walking at the same pace, it can spray out and get the people next to you or even your dog. So 45-degree zone of fire. And the reason why I wanted to show you that first before the carrying position is because the carrying positions are important when you are out there bird hunting. And in that last scenario, we saw 3 people. And if you noticed that the person in the middle was carrying his gun in a shoulder carry that looked like this. And the reason why is because there's nobody behind him. So if that gun for any reason at all, because you're out there hunting, hold on one second. If you're out there hunting at all and that gun is not in the safest position possible, you want to make sure that there's nobody behind you. And if it fires, it's going off where it's not going to hit anybody. That's the reason that the middle guy carries a shoulder carry. Shoulder carry is good if you're back.
Don, there's 2 of the graphics on there. The broken gun. There's what they call an Africa carry at the end of the first row.
Yep, right, right this one.
I don't understand it myself. I've seen a lot of videos where there's a lot of broken guns. In other words, broken style guns.
Right, that break action.
Used in Africa. So you can carry that there it is right there.
Yes.
With the gun closed, I don't like the shoulder carry, the Africa carry. That's the only time I like a broken shoulder carry is if the gun is broken. And I mean open.
Yeah, that break action.
Yeah, to come off of that, and we're going to talk about that sling in just a second.
Yeah.
The only time, like I said, the only time to use the shoulder carry, I think, is with a broken gun. Now, the sling, there's more and more and more slings being used, especially on shotguns.
Yes.
I use a sling all the time, but I have a rule, and I don't like to hunt with anybody that has a shell in the chamber with a sling. Yes. And the reason being is everybody's been out in the brush. They know how stiff the brush is. A safety can get knocked off, and the next twig can fire the gun. That barrel is about excuse me, 1.5 feet away from your ear.
Yes. All right. So you
never want that to happen.
No.
I think in 30 years, 60 years, I have never not had time to put a shell in the chamber.
Yes.
And that's my own personal rule. It's not a law, but that's what I do.
That's what you do. All right, so that sling carry, what you're seeing up there, that is an easy carry for long treks through open country. So you're keeping a hand on the sling when you're walking so it doesn't slide off your shoulder if you happen to trip. It's not recommended for thick brush because the gun could be knocked from your shoulder. So again, that's like when you're hiking out to your spot. Okay, then your next one is your two-hand carry, or a ready carry as it's often called. And those provide the best control, particularly in thick brush or weeds, or when you need to move and fire quickly. So that's your two-hand ready. And again, you want to carry that two-hand ready if in this situation, see his gun is pointed to the left. So you want to make sure you're not walking with somebody to the left of you. And then you have your African style carry, which we briefly touched on there. And then, oh, let me go back. I touched something. All right. Then you have your trail carry, and your trail carry leaves a hand free for balance, but don't use it when you're behind somebody. It's not recommended for walking in snow or brush because debris can get in the barrel. Then you have your elbow carry or your side carry, and that is comfortable, but it has the least muzzle control. It can also snag in brushy terrain, so use it when no one's in front of you. And then you have your cradle carry. Cradle carry is comfortable and secure, and it reduces that arm fatigue, keeps your arm from getting tired. And then we kind of talked about that one. So with that, then I want to talk about firing positions. So you have different firing positions, and this is on the hunter education test as well. So there's 4 firing positions, and when we do practical in class, we actually demonstrate these and we do these. So your first one would be standing, and that would be like if you're out in the field and like what we talked about with if you're pheasant hunting or grouse hunting, then you're standing up typically, okay? Then, and that one's used, it's smooth, it's natural, most people are used to it. Then you have your kneeling position, and that's when you're on one knee up, one knee down, shoulder sits there, or your elbow sits here on your knee, and that's where your hand is on that forearm, that forestock of the gun. And then, let's see, it's less steady than the prone and the sitting. Then our next position is sitting position, and that's like sitting crisscross applesauce, and you put your elbows on your knees, and you're holding the gun up that direction.
Dawn, it's still in carries.
I know. I'm just demonstrating. I'm just talking about it.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then you have your prone position, and prone position is the most stable of all of your firing positions. And the reason why is because you have many points of contact for that stability when you're laying on the ground. So prone position, so laying on the ground, is your most steadiest position, while standing is your least steadiest position. All right, we've got to wrap up here in a few minutes. Hopefully we're keeping everybody's attention. And I want to talk about crossing fences real quick.
When you approach a fence, make sure the safety is engaged on your firearm. Before crossing, you must make your firearm safe. Point your firearm in a safe direction. Remove all ammunition from the firearm. Visually observe the chamber to make sure it is empty. With the action open, lay the firearm on the ground under the fence. Walk down the fence line at least 2 fence posts away from the firearm and cross the fence on the side that the muzzle is not pointing. Once you are on the other side, you can retrieve your firearm. Point the firearm in a safe direction. Verify that the firearm is clear of obstructions. Reload, ensure the safety is engaged, and continue your hunt.
So that's a demonstration with one person.
When two hunters approach a fence,
And here's
they
your
must
cue.
make sure the safety is engaged on their firearms. Before crossing the fence, both hunters must make their firearms safe. Point your firearm in the safest available direction. Remove all ammunition from your firearm. Visually observe the chamber to make sure it is empty. Once both firearms are safe, the first hunter must hand his firearm with the action open to the second hunter. The second hunter will securely hold both firearms while pointing them in a safe direction. The first hunter can now safely cross the fence. After the first hunter has crossed the fence, the second hunter safely passes both firearms, one at a time with the actions open, to the first hunter. The second hunter can now safely cross the fence. Now that both hunters are on the other side, the second hunter can receive his firearm. Both hunters must now point their firearms in a safe direction, verify that the firearm is clear of obstructions, reload, ensure the safety is engaged, and continue their hunt.
All right, so again, in our hunter ed classes, when we do demonstrations of this, every time that we pass a firearm or a firearm leaves our hands, we go through that whole routine of the actions open, chambers clear, and safeties on. And anywhere you're at, any gun, any firearm that you're handling, get in the habit of just repeating those, even in your head. That will prevent so many accidents and so many injuries. And then the last thing that I want to cover is eye and ear protection. And there are so many different forms out there. They have customizable, they have just ones that, you know, are almost a one size fits all. Try and get used to what is the most comfortable for you. But you should always wear eye and ear protection when out shooting. And like I said, there's many types and many varieties of eye and ear protection. Choose one that's comfortable and provides the best protection for you and your needs. Otherwise, I think that pretty much covers everything. And as we talked about, these every year we have incidents and injuries around. We don't have very many in Nevada, thank goodness. That means we must be doing our job. But we hear of incidents happening all the time that could be prevented, from people being mistaken for big game, to people falling out of tree stands, to people not properly action open, chamber clear, safety on, and laying their gun on the back of a vehicle or inside a vehicle and it getting bumped and shooting. We hear things like that all the time, and it's so hard as educators when we preach these things and we practice these things to have these things happen, because they are all preventable. Just getting in that habit of those safety things, making sure that, you know, your action's open, your chamber's clear, your safety's on, proper handling of the firearm, make sure you're comfortable and you know the equipment that you're using. And those are the biggest things. If I could have you walk away with anything right now, those are the biggest things I'd have you walk away with. Bernie, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, you mentioned when you come up to the car and lay something against it.
Yeah.
With long guns, if you even touch your ATV, shoot off of it, lean your gun against the car on the tire, and there's a shell in the chamber, it's against the law, and it is called loaded gun in the car.
Yes.
And there's no exception to that.
No, preventable. That's right. All right. Can you see that, Bernie? What do you see?
Yeah, I see.
Okay, it doesn't want to pop it up. I don't know why. But if there's any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and I will answer, or Bernie will answer any questions that you guys may have. And then again, this is part 2 of a 4-week series every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Next week, we are covering outdoor preparedness and survival. So that's next Wednesday at 7. Then,
By the way, any
Yeah.
accident as far as exposure
Yes.
is in April. That's the worst month of the year.
All right. So it's good that we're covering it then. All right. So if you have any questions that you don't want to answer on or ask on here, feel free to message me if there is a topic that you would like covered or information that you would like, or if you would like a book, a hunter's education book. I know Marcy requested these books. Let's see, what else? If you have any questions about big game hunting or the draw or submitting your hunter ed certificate, you can reach out to me and I can help you, or you can call this 1-855-542-6369 number, and they will answer any and every question that you may have. And with our motto right now, embrace the outdoors and practice safe recreation. And I just absolutely loved this picture that was sent to me by an instructor. And it just is the epitome of what we do. It is us being outdoors, enjoying the outdoors, and just being a part of something. So, but if there are no questions, we're at our 45-minute marker. I would love to thank Bernie for joining us this evening. I appreciate his knowledge and expertise. And thank you to our participants for being here this evening.
Hopefully it's coming. We'll be into the practical classes.
I hope so. Fingers crossed. All right. I'm not seeing any questions. So on that note, ladies, have a fabulous night. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully you'll join us next Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
ladies are the better shots.
Heck yeah, we are.
All right.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.